You know what separates the people who dream about success from the people who actually live it? It's not talent. It's not luck. It's discipline. Discipline is the bridge between your current reality and the life you keep saying you want. But here's the challenge. Most of us wait until we feel like it before we do the thing. And let me tell you something. If you wait until you feel like it, you'll never do it. Discipline isn't about waiting for motivation. Discipline is about creating motion when motivation is nowhere to be found. Success is not something you buy once and keep forever. Success is rented, and discipline is the rent you pay every single day. Too many people think that once they hit a goal, land a deal, or finally reach a breakthrough, they can sit back and relax. But the truth is you don't get to stop paying. You don't get to skip rent. The moment you stop paying with discipline, success will evict you. This is why people rise high and then fall just as fast, because they thought yesterday's discipline would cover today's demands. Let me tell you, the landlord of success only accepts daily payments. When you wake up in the morning, you have two choices: pay the rent with discipline or forfeit your right to stay where you want to be. That means discipline in your health, discipline in your finances, discipline in your relationships, discipline in your business. You cannot expect long-term results from short-term effort. And here's the hook. Success doesn't care how much you want it. Success only cares how much you're willing to work for it. Wanting is free, but discipline is the price tag. Think about it this way. If you rent a house, you can't just tell the landlord, I really want to live here. I love the neighborhood. I feel inspired about this place. No, the landlord doesn't care about your feelings. He only cares about the rent. That's how success operates. You can cry about how tired you are. You can complain about how hard it is. You can talk about how long it's taking. But the only question success is asking is this: did you pay today's rent? If the answer is no, then don't be surprised when doors close, opportunities vanish, and momentum disappears. The beauty of discipline is that the rent isn't outrageous. Success doesn't ask you to move a mountain in one day. It asks you to show up, do the work, and stay consistent. The rent is paid in small, daily deposits: waking up earlier, making the call, writing the plan, studying the skill, practicing the craft. Individually, these acts may feel insignificant, but compounded over time, they build a fortress that nobody can knock down. The rent is not expensive, but the cost of not paying it is devastating. Here's the truth many people don't want to hear: success is never sold, it's leased. Every great athlete, every wealthy entrepreneur, every influential leader is on a lease agreement with success. That's why they keep training, keep learning, keep grinding. They know yesterday's payment doesn't roll over. They know they can't live on yesterday's workout, yesterday's sales call, yesterday's discipline. Success respects one thing and one thing only: consistency. And if you're thinking, but forcing myself to stay disciplined is hard, remember this: so is failing. So is regret. So is mediocrity. You are going to pay a price no matter what. The difference is that discipline costs pennies, compared to the fortune that regret will steal from you. You will either pay in discipline today or pay in disappointment tomorrow. But you cannot escape the payment. So the real question is, how bad do you want to stay in the house of success? If you want the view, if you want the freedom, if you want the security, then pay the rent. Don't wait. Don't negotiate. Don't excuse yourself out of it. Pay the rent with action. Pay it with commitment. Pay it with focus. Because success doesn't take IOUs. It only takes discipline, and rent is due every day. One of the biggest traps that holds people back from greatness is the belief that discipline depends on feelings. We live in a world where people say, I'll do it when I feel ready. I'll take action when I feel motivated. I'll start when I feel inspired. But let me give you a wake-up call. Feelings are the weakest decision makers you could ever have. Feelings are fickle. Feelings are inconsistent. Feelings change with the weather. If you allow feelings to run your life, you'll never experience consistent success, because success is built on decisions and discipline, not emotions. Here's the hook. Your feelings don't get a vote when it comes to your future. They can scream, they can complain, they can beg you to stay comfortable, but they don't have authority unless you hand it over. The moment you decide that your standards are higher than your emotions, you begin to take control of your destiny. Discipline means saying, I may not feel like it, but I'm going to do it anyway because my commitment matters more than my comfort. That's the shift that separates leaders from followers, winners from quitters, and achievers from dreamers. Think about this. If a pilot only flew the plane when he felt like it, nobody would ever reach their destination. If a surgeon only operated when she felt motivated, lives would be lost. If parents only showed up for their children when they were in the mood, families would fall apart. Discipline is doing what's required regardless of how you feel, because you know the mission is bigger than the mood. And when you live that way, you discover a power inside of you that emotions can never give you. The truth is, your feelings are not the enemy. They're just unreliable. They can be acknowledged, but they should never be obeyed. The problem is most people let their feelings become dictators instead of advisors. Discipline is about reversing that order. You listen to your vision, you follow your commitments, and you let feelings tag along, but never lead. Because the future you want doesn't care if you were tired, or if you didn't feel like it, or if you were scared. The future only cares if you did the work. Here's another hook to lock in your mind. Your feelings are temporary, but your results are permanent. That workout you didn't feel like doing, missing it will leave a permanent gap in your progress. That business call you didn't feel like making, skipping it could mean missing an opportunity that never comes back. That skill you didn't feel like practicing, avoiding it could set you back years. Feelings disappear, but the consequences of bowing down to feelings can last a lifetime. And here's the paradox. The more you act in spite of your feelings, the more your feelings begin to align with your actions. When you force yourself to wake up early even when you're tired, soon your body adapts and your feelings catch up. When you force yourself to take action in business, even when you're nervous, soon your confidence grows and fear loses its grip. Feelings eventually follow discipline, but discipline must always go first. So the next time you hear that inner voice say, I don't feel like it, remind yourself that feelings don't get a vote. Remind yourself that your goals don't care, your dreams don't care, your future doesn't care. Only your discipline counts. Only your consistency matters. And if you can silence your feelings long enough to let discipline lead, you'll build a life that feelings alone could never create. The most powerful transformation discipline brings is not just in what you achieve, but in who you become. Success is not only about reaching goals, it's about reshaping identity. Every time you practice discipline, you're not simply checking off an action, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. And here's the hook. The real power of discipline is that it rewrites your story from the inside out. You stop saying, I'm trying to be disciplined, and you start saying, I am disciplined. That shift changes everything. Think about how most people see themselves. They say things like, I'm not consistent, I always quit, I'm not built for this. And because they believe that identity, they live it out day after day. But every act of discipline is a hammer that chips away at that old identity and builds a new one. When you force yourself to follow through, even in the small things, you're proving to yourself that you're not who you used to be. You're becoming someone who keeps promises to yourself. And that identity is priceless. Here's the truth. Your identity always drives your behavior. If you believe you're lazy, you'll act lazy. If you believe you're inconsistent, you'll make inconsistent choices. But when you begin to see yourself as disciplined, as committed, as someone who shows up no matter what, your actions will rise to meet that belief. The hook is this discipline is not about forcing yourself forever. It's about forcing yourself long enough to believe a new identity. And once you believe it, the discipline becomes natural. Look at how this plays out in real life. A person who never exercised before forces themselves to show up at the gym for a week, then a month, then 3 months. At first it feels unnatural, forced, uncomfortable. But after a while, they begin to see themselves differently. They no longer say, I'm trying to get in shape. They start saying, I'm a person who works out. That's identity. And now, working out isn't just an activity, it's who they are. The same applies to business, finances, relationships, or spiritual growth. Discipline turns actions into habits and habits into identity. Here's another hook. Success is not something you chase. It's something you attract by the person you become. And who you become is shaped by what you repeatedly do. Discipline is the molding process that shapes your identity into someone success cannot ignore. If you want wealth, discipline turns you into the kind of person who manages money wisely, invests consistently, and multiplies resources. If you want influence, discipline turns you into the kind of person who studies, prepares, and delivers value over and over until others can't help but listen. And let me make this clear. Identity is not built in grand gestures. It's built in small daily decisions. Waking up on time, finishing what you start, doing the hard thing first. These are bricks you lay every day. And before long, they build a foundation of identity that nothing can shake. The greatest freedom you'll ever experience comes when you no longer fight with yourself over what to do, because your identity already decides for you. A disciplined person doesn't debate whether to follow through. They just do it because it's who they are. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like discipline is a constant battle, remind yourself that every choice is more than an action. It's a declaration of identity. Each time you choose discipline over comfort, you're voting for your future self. And eventually, those votes add up. And you wake up one day realizing you've become a completely different person. That's the gift of discipline. It doesn't just change what you achieve. It changes who you are. The secret most people overlook is that greatness is not built in massive leaps. It's built in tiny, consistent steps repeated over time. Everybody wants the big breakthrough, the overnight success, the dramatic transformation. But the truth is, success hides in the daily disciplines that seem too small to matter. The hook here is simple. What you do consistently in private will one day show up publicly as undeniable transformation. You don't have to do everything at once. You just have to do something long enough. Most people underestimate the power of small consistency because they can't see immediate results. They go to the gym for a week, and when the mirror doesn't change, they quit. They read one book on business, and when their income doesn't explode, they stop learning. They post a few times online, and when nobody notices, they give up. The problem isn't that their actions didn't work. The problem is they didn't keep going long enough to see the compounding effect. Consistency is like planting seeds. You don't dig them up after 3 days because the tree hasn't grown. You water them, you nurture them, and eventually you reap a harvest that looks impossible compared to the small seed you started with. Here's the hook you must remember. Consistency compounds. Small efforts multiplied by time create results so big that people will call them miracles. But they were never miracles. They were just the reward of staying consistent. Brushing your teeth for 2 minutes doesn't give you perfect teeth, but brushing every day for years does. Saving a few dollars doesn't make you wealthy, but saving consistently builds wealth that changes generations. Reading a page doesn't make you wise, but reading daily turns you into a leader others look to for answers. Transformation doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency. Think of the alternative. Inconsistency always resets your progress. Every time you stop and start again, you're paying the price of beginning from scratch. And that's why so many people feel stuck. They're not lacking ability, they're lacking consistency. They treat discipline like a sprint when it's actually a marathon. And here's the painful truth. Starting over again and again is far more exhausting than simply staying consistent in the first place. You don't need perfection, you need persistence. Consistency also builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. Every small, consistent action is a promise kept, and every broken promise weakens your confidence. When you consistently follow through, even in little things, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted, and that confidence bleeds into every area of your life. People can sense it too. Customers, clients, friends, and family trust consistent people because they know what to expect. Consistency is the language of credibility. And here's another powerful hook. Consistency is boring to the undisciplined, but it's the breeding ground of extraordinary lives. The repetitions that seem dull today are the very things that create the dazzling results people will admire tomorrow. The athlete running laps at 5 a.m. isn't making headlines, but that unseen consistency builds the strength that wins championships. The entrepreneur studying market trends at midnight isn't being celebrated, but that quiet consistency produces the strategy that builds empires. Greatness is not glamorous in the process. It's consistent, sometimes dull, sometimes inconvenient, but always transformative. So if you've been waiting for big leaps to change your life, stop waiting and start moving with small, consistent steps. Remember this hook. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not closed by occasional effort, but by consistent discipline. Keep watering